So please label this next section in your notes. You're probably There's a very powerful tool that we can use to summarize the different characteristics that a graph has. So let's look at this, summarizing the characteristics of a graph. Using what we're going to call a three-line chart. So let's just take a little function here. Let's call this f of x. And let's use a three-line chart to summarize the characteristics of the f of x curve. And this is going to be a lot easier if we do it in a particular way. The point of this tool isn't super obvious now, but it's going to be extremely important for the next lesson. So we're going to draw three lines, hence the name. And we're starting at x is -2. We're ending at x is 5. And for the first line, we're going to use to summarize where the function is concave up, concave down, or has an inflection point. Remember, an inflection point is where the concavity changes. So if we look on this little graph right here, I see this dome shape here. So that means that f of x is concave down up until, looks like it switches at about 1.5. And after that, it's a cup shape. It's concave up. So my first line is just like that. My second line I'm going to use to summarize increasing and decreasing. And also relative extrema, that's maxima and minima. Minima is just the plural of minimum, maxima, plural of maximum. So, starting here again at -2, I can see that the function is increasing, going up until we get to x equals 0. Then it's decreasing until we get to x equals 3. And then increasing again until x equals 5. Notice that I've put this 0 in between -2 and 1.5. I've put this 3 in between 1.5 and 3. That'll just make things a little bit easier. Then our final level is plus minus. Use bottom line to summarize positive, negative, and zeros. Okay, So I can see that f of x is positive up until x equals 2, so 2 is right there. And then it's negative from 2 to 4. And then positive again from 4 to 5. Oops, should be positive. Now I'm going to go back and mark each of these numbers that I've written on the graph in terms of what they are. So, for example, right here, at x equals 2, this is a 0. So is 4. Right, like that. The change from increasing to decreasing, that's a maximum. From decreasing to increasing, that's a minimum. And then here where concavity changes, that's an inflection point, or IP. So that's what the three-line chart is. It's just summarizing that. And now let's have you try an example. So let's use a three-line chart to summarize the characteristics for the curve g of x below. And so remember, the first level of the three-line chart is going to be concave up, concave down, and inflection points. The second level is going to be increasing, decreasing, and extrema. And the third line is going to be plus, minus, and then I guess we can mark over here also zeros, also extrema, and inflection points. So take a second on your own to try to fill those in, and then I'll fill them in up here. So pause the video for a second and restart when you're ready. Okay, so I put these little arrows on here because of the little arrows on here. This function is going to keep continuing on forever. And we're looking for concave up, concave down. So this is a dome shape up until we get to where x is -3. Then it's a cup shape up until about -1. If you can't quite see, that's okay. We can only approximate it from the graph. There are other more precise ways that we'll get later on. But it should be about -3-ish. Anyway, you can see this is a dome shape here, cup shape there. Dome shape here up until about 2. And then cup shape for the rest. So wherever these switch, there's an inflection point. Now for the extrema, that's increasing and decreasing. So g of x is increasing, increasing, increasing up until we get to where x equals 1. Decreasing until x equals 3. And then increasing again after that. That means we've got a maximum when g of x switches from increasing to decreasing, and a minimum when g of x switches from decreasing to increasing. Finally, positive, negative, and zeros. At x equals -5, there's a 0. At x equals 3, there's another 0. We can see that g of x is below the x-axis, so it's negative here. Then it's above the x-axis here, above the x-axis here. And there we go. We've done the summary.